quite a few anniversaries we like to not relive here. A couple weeks ago, we had the 11th anniversary of Katrina when it happened. And now coming up this Sunday, the 15th anniversary of 9/11. Joining us on the phone from Fox News Radio, Tonya J. Powers. Good morning.
Good morning.
You know, we were talking, especially about the 9/11 anniversary, the Katrina anniversary, big things like that. For so long, you almost have that as such a landmark in time where things were before the attacks and things were after. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, we look at things like airport security, where we can remember how they were before and how they are now. Obviously, the military, there's a very clear before the attacks and very, clear after. What do you think it means? And 15 years on, why is this day so important still, and how people remember it?
Well, one of the things that evolved quickly after the 9/11 attacks, I mean, there was this massive, rush on anything red, white, and blue. We probably all remember that.
Yeah.
There were signs, there were flags up everywhere. It's the most patriotic thing I'd ever seen in my entire life, was the way everybody came together. Another thing that, of course, everybody, and we really didn't, we didn't have Twitter and things like that back then, or I'm sure the hashtag would have been never forget all over the place. But that was the thing, was never forget. And I think that's one of the reasons it's so important to mark milestones like this. Even if you don't want to call it an anniversary, it is a milestone. And in part of that keeping of never forget, it's not just never forget we were attacked. It's never forget almost 3,000 people lost their lives. Mm-hmm. There were people, families who lost family members. It's devastated children that, never met their parent, never met their dads. I mean, it had a huge effect on everybody nationwide. It wasn't just one city. It was, it may have happened in New York, but you've come for all of us,
Yeah. And so I think it as you said, it is a time to remember. And I think for some people, I think we have come so, I think there was such that fear that what are we going to do now? But then everybody reacted like Americans do. They got together. They made sure that, people were protected. I remember the stories about people parking their trucks around, crop dusters, because that was one of the things that they were worried about after.
Forgot about that.
That's true.
Just the way that people came together. Tell us a little bit about the museum. Tell us about what some of the activities are that are planned for this weekend.
Well, the museum, if you've never gotten to come to New York and go visit the museum, if you're here, plan a trip to the 9/11 Museum and Memorial. I mean, the memorial's free. It's outside. It's of course, the pools there, the big square pools that are the footprint of where the Twin Towers stood, and it is a massive thing. Even if you never saw them, I never got to see them before the attacks. So going after and seeing the pools was just, I just stood there and looked at it. I couldn't believe they were that massive.
Massive, yeah.
They were huge. And if you go to the museum, one of the interesting, there's so many things to see. Leave some time. Don't think you're going to run through it in an hour and a half, by the way.
Yeah, you'll be there.
Yeah, it's one of those things you want to take your time and you want to see. There's a whole lot of different parts to it. But I think one of the most interesting parts is when you go in, of course, you see the big beams that they salvaged, two of the large ones, and you kind of get an idea of the scope. But the museum is not above ground; it's below ground. You actually descend under the foundation, and that's where you really get a sense of how large things are. Because when you go through the museum, you're literally at the bottom of those pools. You can see the bottom of the pools, the outline of them when you're standing in the museum. So you're under everything, and you're seeing the big retaining wall. The wall that was put up to keep the Hudson River out. It's just, there's a lot of different things to see. There is something for everybody. And by the way, if you've got kids and you're not sure how to talk to them, by the way, this is the first year, I believe, that high school freshmen will be taught as a historical event. 9/11, not as something that they were alive for.
Wow.
Yeah.
I really think, what
my mind.
Comes to mind to me is that, we knew about heroes before. I think we appreciated the first responders, but when that happened and you heard the stories of these firefighters, this enormous number of firefighters who continued to go up into the building after it happened, that didn't say, hey, I'm not going up. Hey, this building's on fire. This building could come down. Mm-hmm. I don't even think that was in anyone's thoughts. They were just going up. So
Yeah. I've talked to so many. I've interviewed so many people in the last 3 years since I've been here in New York. It's kind of an ongoing quest of mine to talk to people and get their 9/11 story. And first responders, one of them was a retired police detective, and there were a lot of police officers who were in there as well and lost. But he told me about what it was like to try and get people out, and he helped people out down the survivor staircase. And that's part of the museum, actually. And he said hundreds of people were able to get away from the buildings before they collapsed by going down that staircase. He actually rode out the second tower collapse under an overhang.
Yes,
I do remember that story.
I do too.
It's fascinating. I'll actually have that one again on Sunday. I'll do part of his story. He has many things that are in the museum, and he's retired now, but he still deals with it every day. He said every time he has a cough, he's worried that he's got something that has taken the lives of so many first responders who lived through it, and then had illness afterwards because of it.
Yeah.
Well, Tonya J. Powers, we appreciate your time this morning. Obviously, I know it's probably going to be a pretty hard weekend. I know that it weighs really heavy, the 9/11 anniversary on New York, especially Lower Manhattan. Our best to everyone up there. We appreciate your time this morning.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Tonya.